A moment not seen in decades. President Joe Biden no longer seeking re-election. Right now, we continue our coverage with the potential legal ramifications of the president's decision. Joining me now this morning is our 9 News legal expert, Whitney Traylor. Whitney, good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Right.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
A big day to be back. The GOP has actually already threatened lawsuits over removing Biden from ballots. What is the purpose of this lawsuit, and will it work?
Right. It's an interesting idea. The notion, and it's really, I heard Mike Johnson, the speaker, mentioning it, the Heritage Foundation, and the notion behind it is to essentially keep Biden on the ballot, which I don't think will work. And I think most election experts would agree with me that this won't work because he's not the formal nominee. He's the presumptive nominee at this point. And so the law defines the presidential nominee as that person who's nominated at the National Convention, which hasn't happened yet. So any lawsuits right now, essentially the legal term would be they're not ripe and they don't have standing. So I don't think any lawsuits would go far, but this is, politics. And so anything to distract and cause resources to go to other places, they'd probably file the lawsuit and then on the same day file a press release. So, but I don't think it has any merit.
Yeah, but regardless, they are going forward with this and they are filing them. Where do you think that they are filing them, or where they would have the best luck filing these lawsuits?
Well, I don't know that they filed yet, but I would be surprised if they didn't. And so they would likely file in states that don't follow the national, the DNC rules, and so they have their own rules. So, South Carolina, Wisconsin, and really primarily Ohio. And the reason is because Ohio originally had its certification date to certify its candidate as August 7th, which is before the convention. But two things happened. The Ohio legislature moved that date back till September 1st. And the DNC said, hey, we're going to take a virtual roll call before the actual convention. So, and now whether that virtual roll call happens or not is going to be a question. I suspect it still will, but because of these new developments, we don't know.
All right, well, we shall see. Let's talk about money here.
Yeah.
What happens to the campaign funds that have already been raised by Biden's campaign?
Yeah, that's a great question because they have about 91 million on hand, and with the campaign committees, it's about 240 million. But the good thing for Kamala Harris is that her and President Biden were registered with the FEC. So if she is the nominee, that money, the 91 million, can easily be transferred to her. If it's someone else, then it gets real tricky. That money can't necessarily go to them because donors in the primary made those donations to Kamala Harris and President Biden. Now, what President Biden could do is he could donate the money to the DNC if it's another candidate, but then only about 32 million of that could go to that candidate. He could donate it to a super PAC, but then you have other rules as well. So really, this is another sort of political argument for why Kamala Harris should get it, because that money continuity could just flow right to her.
Which brings me to my next question, because, there are a lot of moving parts right here in this story. What happens next in the process? What is the very next thing we should be looking at?
Well, the next thing would be President Biden releasing his delegates, and then the potential nominees. Obviously, Kamala Harris is going to move forward, and if there's any other candidates, they have to get at least 300 delegates in writing to say to be eligible to be the candidate, and then they would have to win a majority of the delegates. And right now, there's about 3,900 regular delegates, and then there's about 700 super delegates. So at the convention, they would have to get a majority of those delegates on the first call. So that's about 1,968 votes. If they didn't get those, then on the second vote, those super delegates, those additional 700 would come into play, and then it would keep voting until there was an actual candidate that won a majority of those delegates.
Yeah, well, next month's DNC just got a lot more interesting given this process. We're going to be paying very close attention to what happens there, and of course, bring all of our friends at home the latest across the networks of 9 News. And Whitney, we hope that you'll be a part of that coverage too.
For sure, I'll be around.
All right, Whitney, thank you, my friend. Let's get